Today on the show, we have AJ Jain from New Delhi talking about his new book, Let's Connect, Using LinkedIn to Get Ahead at Work. It's great to have you on the show, AJ.
Hi.
AJ, you're also an independent columnist, a blogger, and this is your first book. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. I write for national newspapers and magazines back in India, and I have my blogs, which I run almost full-time, and as a potential source of income. And now I've started writing books.
What is the bottom line business benefits of using LinkedIn?
I think everybody calls it a professional networking site. So naturally, it's all about business networking. But networking for the sake of networking doesn't really lead to much. It needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a certain thought process in mind before you do anything about it. And I think the biggest business benefit that you get from it is your personal branding. Because there are so many people watching you on LinkedIn. There are so many people looking at your profile. They're watching how you interact with other people. So it's all about personal branding. And once you have your personal brand built up, then one thing can lead to another. It's also about staying in touch with people you wouldn't have otherwise met. And that means it's like a 24/7 business conference that you would go to without moving from your desk necessarily. So you stay in touch with people, you interact with them, it becomes a global focus group for you, it becomes a sounding board, it becomes a resource group. So these are all the benefits that you get, but it all depends on how you use LinkedIn to really get the benefits out.
What is your definition of personal branding?
If you just forget for a moment that we are talking about LinkedIn, it's about what happens in real life too. Opportunities come your way depending on how people perceive you. They see your track record, they see what kind of a personality you have, and that's something in the offline world, it's limited to a fewer people who can watch you and who can rate you. If you go to LinkedIn, it's a much broader universe who's looking at you, and what you project yourself as, that's your personal branding.
It's a way for people to get to know you and know what you're doing, and something about the quality of you as a person.
That's right, and based on both your profile, which is a static part of your presence on LinkedIn, which changes once in a while whenever you make changes, and the other is the more active part of it when you participate in various forums, especially the Q&As. That's when people get to understand you even better.
What do you see are the key components of LinkedIn?
There are two key components which I would say around which everything on LinkedIn happens. One is your profile, and one is your participation in the Q&As. When I talk about the profile, it's like your CV, but much more than that, because it's a dynamic CV, because you keep updating whatever is happening in your life, and people can see the latest. You can get introductions from people who worked with you, not introductions, actually recommendations from people who worked with you, so others can see what kind of a professional you are. So it's a very dynamic CV in one sense. The other key component to it, which I touched upon earlier also, is the Q&A, which I think is a very powerful feature, and you can participate in that in two ways. One is by asking questions, and when you get answers from people, you'll suddenly realize you're meeting so many more people which you otherwise would not have. And more importantly, I think you should actively participate in answering other people's questions. And this is how you build up networks. This is how you meet people. This is how people observe you. This is how you observe other people. If you do these two things well, I think I would say a winning path on LinkedIn.
So for people who haven't used LinkedIn very much, can you just mention what is the structure of the questions and answers?
It's actually quite simple. They have different categories, and you can go and post a question on any category. Say you have some human resources issues, or you have some finance issues, and you can actually post a question over there, which is usually open for 7 days. And anyone on LinkedIn who sees that question can choose to answer that and help you out with what the nature of your query. Likewise, other people post questions, and you can actually keep reading those questions. And anything which is relevant to you or something which you have an expertise in, it's always a good idea to answer those questions. So it's all under different heads, under different categories. So it's actually quite simple. Nothing. It's like a group of people sitting in a room and just posting questions and answers to each other.
But there seems to be also that feature of being able to choose what's the best question, so you can gain recognition as an expert.
That's right. Because, and it's also it's a very powerful feature because every time you ask a question and different people answer your question, you can rate any one of the answers as best, any number of answers as good, and ignore the rest. You may choose not to rate at all. You may choose not to rate any as best and just a few good and few nothing. And every time you rate somebody's answer as best, he gets one rating point under the category it was asked in. So against that person's profile, you have that expertise in, say, human resources. A person got 3 best answers. So expertise in human resources, it'll say in brackets 3.
I understand. I built part of the podcast equipment that we're using from some advice I got from LinkedIn.
Okay. Like I said earlier, Q&A is a form of interacting with people, and then in the process you identify people who are smart, who are intelligent, who can be useful to you, and they look at you likewise. For example, as a journalist, as a writer, I use LinkedIn Q&A extensively for any story that I'm writing or any research that I'm doing, and I've got some great inputs. In fact, the whole book has been written only because of my correspondence on Q&As. If you see the book, it's full of quotes from people, it's full of testimonials, it's full of case studies, and these have all come through questions which are raised on the Q&A section.
Yes, I remember answering some of the questions related to your book online. It was very exciting to participate in it.
Yeah, I remember that, yep.
Another piece is this idea of giving endorsements. That's been fascinating because how many places can you acknowledge another person that can be seen by the world? Could you talk about that?
Well, it's, on a CV you normally have a reference, but it just the reference is usually a name, a designation, and an address or a telephone number or an email. You're right. This is actually the actual endorsement for the world to see, and it's a very powerful feature. But as I've mentioned in my book, one has to be very, very careful when one is giving an endorsement to somebody else. Don't do it for the sake of doing it, and don't do it just because somebody asked for it. Only if you have genuinely worked with the person, and if you are in a position to rate the person, should you give an endorsement for anyone. Otherwise, your own word will lose credibility.
You should just give genuine and honest recognition of things you believe they truly are good at.
Absolutely, because every week I get a couple of requests from people. They say, could you endorse my work? And I've never even worked with them. They might be my connections, but if I've not worked with them, I can't rate their work. I politely refuse.
And of course, you need to be linked to someone to give them an endorsement.
Yeah, you have to be a first-degree connection.
That could be a way, if there's someone you've experienced quality work with in the past, that is one possible way to get them to be part of your group, is invite them to join it, to endorse them.
Absolutely.
What are some of the top mistakes or inappropriate behaviors people do in LinkedIn?
I can actually sum that in one sentence. People forget that LinkedIn is just a reflection of the offline world. Unlike many other social networks, this is real people doing real-world interactions, and over here, online leads to offline, to the real world. And people forget that we all know about each other's identities. Okay, there might be a few exceptions where people have put up fictitious identities. More or less, it's all real identities that are there on LinkedIn because of the system of checks and balances. It is ensured that people put the real face forward, and what you do on LinkedIn, how you behave, your courtesies, the way when somebody does something for you, the way you react. People forget that this is real world interaction, and they forget some of the courtesies. So, for example, if I invite you to join my network and you accept, and the least I can do is say thank you to you, or if you answer my question or you help me out, I should rate your answer as good or best. Just a few simple things, and people forget, and then they start pestering also. Would you in the real world go on pestering somebody on their face? So why would you do that online just because you can't see each other?
That's a terrific point. Don't forget that this is still networking, and apply the principles that you would use in person with someone.
Yeah, because like I said, unlike some of the fun social networking sites, it doesn't matter because you can send them poke messages, and you can send fun wall messages, and you can send them all kinds of things. And people say, okay, it's we're just having fun, doesn't matter. But LinkedIn is a little more serious than that.
If you were in sales, what is the appropriate way to use introductions where you'll not seem like you're soliciting inappropriately?
Well, again, fortunately, the possibility of abuse on LinkedIn is very limited because you can only have a limited number of introductions per month. It's for a free account, it's 5 per month, and then it just goes up by a very small number for various paid levels. So, number one, the chances of abuse or inappropriate behavior are minimized. And the other thing is, you need to be careful who you're. It's all right to ask for introductions. It's all right to make a sales pitch. But again, like I said earlier, don't have the same approach as you would have in the real world, because these are real world interactions. The way you draft the message, the way you request people, the way you request for an appointment, just because, like I said again earlier, just because they can't see you doesn't mean you can behave any which way.
Using just some sort of common text for every introduction wouldn't be useful, but reading something about the person, writing something up that's personal to them would be a better way to do it.
Absolutely. In fact, even when you are inviting people, I think every invitation should be personalized. You should, because LinkedIn has a standard one-liner. I'd like to connect to you. I would like to connect with you. That should never be used, because it just shows that a person is connecting, wants to connect even without thinking why he's connecting. Each invitation should go out as a personalized invite. If I'm inviting you to one network, I should address you that, okay, I know you, I know what you do, and this is the reason why I want to network with you. It might not be for a very obvious business reason straight away. I might just say, Martin, I want to connect with you because in the future we might do something together. But make it sound personal. Just don't mass mail people.
How much time do you need to spend with LinkedIn each week to be effective?
It all depends on what your objectives are. But I would say a minimum of a few hours just being on that Q&A forum, if nowhere else. Just reading questions, reading other people's answers, posting a few questions of your own, answering a few questions of others. Just keep yourself active on LinkedIn. Be seen around, even if it's 15, 20 minutes a day, which means like an hour or 2 hours in the week. It'll just, keep showing yourself around.
One thing for me is the groups, and that's where using it to connect to colleges or universities. There's a thing certainly in America, that the longer you've been away from college, the more you're happy to hear from someone who went to your college. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be one of the uses for the groups.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you, because I've actually met a lot. I met a lot of my old classmates 10 years or 15 years after I finished school or college. So, and it's, you just feel great meeting up with the guy again and then exchanging notes, and then they link you up with more people. So yes, that group feature can be great in that respect.
Do you recommend spending a little time researching hobbies, interests, trainings you've done to see if that's a way to connect to people?
I think so, because again, like I said, LinkedIn is all about the real world. And when we interact with people, we just don't talk about each other's professional capabilities and interests. We normally strike up a conversation about, okay, where do you holiday? Where do you, have you done so and so adventure sports? What are your hobbies? And that's how we form well-rounded opinions of other people. So likewise, it's a good idea to look up not only the professional part of a person's profile, but even the other activities.
Where do people start with LinkedIn? Let's say they just heard this show and now they're going to sign up for it. What do you recommend to start out?
I think you just go to LinkedIn, you create an account, and the first thing you should do is fill out your profile. Do a good job of it. Fill out all the components of it. I have a chapter dedicated to dressing up your profile. So do that first, and then you start inviting a few of your contacts to come and be a part of your network. LinkedIn gives you a feature where you can import all your contacts from your address books and send them a mass invite. You may want to do that, but in that case, it might just be the same invite going to everyone, or you might actually be selective and pick and choose and decide who to invite. So I think open an account, first fill out your profile, and then start inviting people.
What about the paid versus free areas of LinkedIn? Could you talk about that?
Free allows you pretty much everything that you want to do. The main advantages of having a paid account is you get more introductions, you get capabilities to send a direct message to somebody who's neither on your network nor has he displayed his email address. So these are the two main advantages. So people who need to do a lot of networking, especially recruiters, they go in for the highest levels of accounts, because then they can connect with the people who are not part of the networks. But if for all practical purposes, you may or may not go for a paid account, and you can still enjoy most of the benefits.
What is your view if someone asks to join your group and you don't know them?
Again, it's totally a personal choice, depending what kind of a network you want. There are some people who want a very high quality, highly relevant network of, say, just 20, 30, or 50 or 100 people. Again, this number is very relative. Or there are some people who, on the other extreme, they keep connecting with people and they've got contacts running into thousands and tens of thousands, but they don't even know who they've connected to. When people write to them, they don't even bother responding, because they've just got so many people who they've connected to, they've just totally lost track. Or you strike a balance. And then, again, striking a balance is you can have some contacts who are directly relevant to you, and some contacts you feel that could be relevant to you, could be useful to you going into the future. It's totally a personal call.
Mm-hmm. One of the principles behind LinkedIn is this idea of 6 degrees of separation. And would you describe it a little bit?
Every human being is connected to every other human being on this planet by not more than 6 contacts and contacts of contacts. So kind of 6 links. I've written a statement in my book, something to the effect that the 6 degrees got reduced, at least in the professional world, because most people in the world, at least the ones who are on LinkedIn, are fewer than 6 degrees away from you, actually.
I want to share this networking story because it's such a great one. Through LinkedIn and a podcast discussion group, I met a gentleman who's in marketing in India. Then I heard a friend of mine, Steve Austin, was going over to facilitate one of the main conferences on addressing starvation in India and food issues.
Okay.
I introduced the two of them together. I said, I don't know if there's a connection, but I'd just like to introduce you. He gets to India and finds out that this guy lives 2 kilometers away from where he's staying, and they have breakfast together.
Wow, okay.
Is that not a terrific example of global networking?
Absolutely.
In action. And they've developed a nice friendship. He sent me a photo of them all sitting in a little breakfast place in India, and a connection has been made.
In fact, that's on the back cover of my book. That's what I've mentioned, that the contacts you seek are no longer separated from you by 6 degrees. The number is down to 1, 2, or 3 in most cases.
I just saw that Bill Gates joined LinkedIn, and I noticed I'm only 3 degrees away from him.
Oh, that's great. And how far is your bank account from him?
There's a little bit bigger gap between my checking account than his, I have to say, at least right now.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to tell people from your book that might be useful for someone new to LinkedIn or learning how to use it more powerfully?
I think I'll just repeat what I said earlier, that LinkedIn is all about real-world interactions, and whatever you do, just bear in mind that how would you have behaved if this was the real world? And once you keep reminding yourself of that, you'll just make LinkedIn really work for you. You'll make it productive for you, and you'll be recognized as somebody who's worth connecting to on LinkedIn.
I think that's fantastic advice, and you've given a lot of very useful tips today. Could you tell people how they can learn more about LinkedIn and how they can get your book?
Well, my book should be available on Amazon very soon. Otherwise, you can order direct with me. I have my blog called Tech Gazing. So the link to that is techgazing, as in techgazing.com/LinkedIn. So you can place direct orders, and I'm shipping globally. And you can take a paperback or you can take an ebook. And I think I've based on feedback I've got to the book till now, people are finding it really useful on how to really get started on LinkedIn and really use it to their different needs as professionals. And if you search the internet, you'll also find a lot of useful blogs and write-ups on using LinkedIn. So there's a whole lot of information out there, and my book is just one of them.
A.J. Jain, of course, this podcast came about through LinkedIn, didn't it?
Absolutely.
and our connection and us talking and finding out that you were visiting America at this time, and through the telephone we were able to have this show. It's an example of utilizing LinkedIn.
Yeah, in fact, most of the copies of the book I've sold till now are only because of my LinkedIn network, and I'm actually putting to test the very ideas that I've proposed in the book, and they've been successful so far.
AJ Jain, it's great having you on the show, and look forward to having you on again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Martin. It was great talking to you.
You've been listening to Inquire Online, where unique questions inspire new answers. To learn about other shows, go to inquireonline.info.